Yeah, Gilia's on Zoom. So, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hello. Okay.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi. Um,
I have Richard. I've Richard with me
okay, good.
in
I'm
person.
sorry I
And
copped out. I am so
uh,
tired.
listen. But you're here. You're still with us, so it's okay. So what I'll do is, so Richard, why don't I do you have the? Let me try to send you a link.
Think we tried this once before, but it interfered with your.
Well, no, oh no, a link to the text that we would
Oh,
look at, so that you can just follow the text. Um, let's see if I can do that from here. Okay. Sorry, give me a moment for me to get a link going for Richard so that he can follow on his phone, and then I will share the screen from there. Okay, and Janet's online.
You had quite a week so far.
Been a bit, yeah. It's been a bit.
Gut wrenching.
Yeah, there's been a lot. Um,
Hi, Janet. Hi.
I may be kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I think that's okay. Okay, all right. Now we'll talk about this. So, okay, okay. So hopefully, all right. So I just texted you that, and now let me put it on the screen for everybody on Zoom. For anybody who's watching on YouTube, I know this is riveting right now. Thank you for your patience.
okay.
Can you see how many people watch on YouTube? I mean, later.
Later I can, but it doesn't really say when people log in, and it doesn't say who necessarily. So
Just curious.
yeah, no, it's fair enough. Okay, make this a little bigger. Okay,
Mm.
yeah, so I figure let's go to Simon 112, and uh, talking about the Amida, which I know I'm pretty confident we have talked about in the past about what the Amida is, and how it's generally structured. I think we've gone over that a couple times, um, about how in the weekday, the first three blessings are that of thanks. Sorry, excuse me. First three are that of praise. The middle section is that of requests, and the last three are of thanks. So this one starts with, one should not ask for one's needs in the first three blessings of the Amidah, nor in the final three. And this is specifically regarding the needs of the individual, but for the needs of the community, it is permitted. Now, that's not how the Amidah is structured today, meaning the Amidah, at least in our prayer books, has been fairly, I think, crystallized. There have been very few changes in the wording of, at the very least, the beginning and the ending of the Amidah in I would say, a few hundred years,
Hmm.
with the exception of the very first paragraph, in which some communities, ours being one of them, including the matriarchs in addition to the patriarchs. Which is still not, I would say it's far more common in conservative synagogues, though it's not at all unanimous.
Hmm. Really?
Yeah, it kind of surprised me, and I mean I remember arguments about it in certain communities when people were really um, debating, do we include the matriarchs or not? Because I would say it is the most prominent evolution of the Amidah we've had in a long, long time.
I wouldn't think it would be so controversial. I don't know. But what do
I looking back, it surprises me. Like, and by the way, looking back, I would say that going into my first year of rabbinical school, I was against it.
Huh.
What changed my mind? I did change my mind. What and well, why was I against it? I was against it because to me it felt like a pretty big change. Like I wasn't ready for it, and like it's like, okay, the beginning of the Amidah, it's pretty, that felt pretty much set with, and then I remember reading, and I forget where I read it. It's like, if you're not going to include, like, if you're talking about the chain of uh, Jewish continuity, right? We talk about the first paragraph of the Amidah, the
Right.
Avot, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak,
Right.
Elohei
You
Yaakov, right?
can't have it without the women
Can't have it without the women.
because,
Yeah,
yeah.
like, yeah, and like once I read that, I'm like, of course,
Slight tangent here, but
sure.
20 years ago, George went to the Cave of the Machpelah, and at the time,
Mhm.
only men were allowed to pray. And when it came time for prayers, the women got kicked out.
Mm,
And he found it kind of ironic he was allowed to stay because he had no idea what he was doing.
mm.
And when we were just in Israel, we went again because I had never been there. And now they have, it's kind of like a mechitza. I mean, a separate, women are, it's no problem.
Yeah.
And the plaques clearly say, like Abraham and Sarah. I mean, the women are
Yeah,
like listed on the plaques. And it was kind of, well, for me, it was, we read their names, they're almost like fictional people. And then here you are, they're actually buried there. I
or
mean,
at least
there's real people.
at least we say that's where
At
we're
least, yeah, all right, that's what my son said to me, right? That's what we did. They're buried somewhere.
Yeah,
But I mean, yeah, all right, so, but
right. But no, but right, it does put a like a visual
it
on it of
does.
sorts.
It makes it seem a whole lot more real. Like, you leave Rachel's tomb and because she's buried separately from the rest of them.
Right.
And did she die in childbirth?
Yeah.
Yeah,
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 that's what I thought, giving birth to Benjamin. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, that was really very moving, Rachel's tomb. I mean, because well, it was the first one I went to. I even bought a snood for the occasion. It was kind of a hoot. But anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've been to Rachel's tomb as well back in the 80s.
right. It's easier to get there now.
Yeah.
There's like a road, like a real road, and you don't need an armored bus, but whatever. Anyway. No, it was kind of it was a very moving experience. Anyway.
No, no, and fantastic. And I mean, so one thing I should, one thing the argument that some might make against including the matriarchs, which I understand, but I don't think it's a compelling enough argument. The argument is I mean, so the argument for the matriarchs is, of course, that God was the God of Abraham and Sarah. Of course, God, etc. What was unique about the patriarch experience was that God, specifically spoke to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to those three people, explaining the importance of the promise of the land, of the descendants being as numerous of the star as the stars of the sky and the sands of the,
He didn't
it's
talk
a,
to the women, right?
right. That conversation did not happen directly with the women. So
Right.
I've get and one thing I remember thinking, it's like, okay, Elohe Avraham, Elohe Yitzchak, Elohe Yaakov. Why not Elohe Yosef? God never talks to Joseph in the Torah. There, or at least there's no recording of a conversation. God, it's like, why isn't it, the God of Moses,
You have a point. And
right?
that's the reason to leave the women out.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the argument for saying, like, okay, there was something specific about the experience that those three men had that others didn't, whether or not they should have. There is something unique about that. I think that the argument of you wouldn't have that lineage without those women, to me, that's a more compelling argument.
Mm.
But I can at least understand where that idea came from. And also, I think in the general spirit um, of egalitarianism, I mean, I think that is, I think that is it's a good thing to expand um, our outlook to the experience of women in addition to those of men. Um, you know, uh, they're trying to think what prayer in the high holidays. There's a and Gilia, I mean, if it's something that you may have davened, feel free to jump in. I feel like there's a prayer in the high holidays that talks about like the experience of I don't know. I'm forgetting who the character is. Like maybe they're talking about King David, and then in recent years they've added a description of Deborah. Right. In other words, they're looking for somebody in the books of the prophets, which, like the Torah, is dominated by male characters in terms of being in positions of power. But you had Deborah.
Right.
Does that sound familiar, Gilia, or is there? I mean, or I may be grasping the straw
Trying
too.
to think, no, I don't, I can't place it.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. I do think that there is something to the idea of you know acknowledging women's experiences that is important in our for the values that we have today. So anyway, so I think that's the biggest emendation. What I'm suspecting in the times of Shulchan Aruch, which remember that we're talking about 16th century, you did have like some Sidurim where things were a little more variable depending on your community. Like, so I can't say that I've studied this in great detail, but I mean, if you've ever heard of a book called the Machzor Vitri, the Machzor Vitri was the Sidur of areas of French areas in Middle Ages. And so, like, what I remember about Machzor Vitri is that this was the Sidur used by Rashi, right? This would have been the Sidur that he would have used. and you're gonna find like different, word choices and things like that. Um, and Now, in terms of development of prayer, there's another one that I do find interesting, and this is going to be from using the Reform perspective. The second blessing of the Amidah is Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you Adonai, Mechayeh hametim,
Mhm.
which brings life to the dead.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we feel about that? Are we really saying that? Are we really believing? Are we really declaring that as a belief? Um,
Depends on what day you ask me.
I hear you. And given that, what is it? The Grateful Dead's one of their guitarists just died not so long ago. Are we giving life to that dead? Okay, sorry, that's a joke. But in all seriousness, bring life to the dead. No,
We call that
um,
doing an Uncle Irving in our family. Yeah.
yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. But it also is, look, that idea of resurrection of the dead is is look, is there a strand of Jewish belief in regarding the afterlife that some people have um grabbed a hold of? Yes. um it's not exactly it's well, not not just not exactly, it isn't by any means a unanimous opinion, and there are people who are understandably uncomfortable with it.
Where would everybody go?
Yeah, yeah, whenever I describe it, I'm like, well, everybody would come, would move to Israel, and they'd build really tall high-rise apartments.
It's a really small space. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and also, do we think, and this is something I'm going to be talking about in Judaism 101 in an upcoming lesson, not too far from now, when we talk about Jewish views of the afterlife, it's like, all right, are we really going to have um uh, like, are we really going to have this, and under what circumstances are we really going to have a Messiah that can, an era of the Messiah that brings about the supernatural?
That's what I don't what I don't understand about Messianic Jews. Well, I actually met the other day. There was a group of them sitting next to us in a restaurant. I didn't know there was a Messianic Jewish congregation around here, but apparently there is.
There is.
In Powell somewhere. Yeah.
There's two, yeah.
There's two, yeah.
East Knox County and there's one in Madisonville.
I didn't know that. If Jesus were actually the Messiah, then why isn't everything perfect now? I mean, it's like I
Yeah,
don't get it. But all right, whatever.
yeah, no, no. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, it's certainly so there's this. So anyway, so there's this whole strand of thinking about reviving the dead.
Right.
Reform Sidurim, for a pretty long time, it was always, they changed it. Instead of Mechayeh Hametim, that brings life to the dead, Mechayeh Hakol, who brings life to all.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Um, there have been times in my own personal prayers where I've said Mechayeh Hakol instead of Mechayeh Hametim, because I'm like, I don't know if I don't know if I believe this, right? Um, I will tell you why I say Mechayeh Hametim. Um, I look at it in a metaphorical way, but I think, it's not about resurrection of the dead, about literal resurrection. Um, there was one time when a Holocaust survivor spoke at the synagogue where I was a rabbi in Charleston. He actually spoke every year until he passed away not so long ago. He was a wonderful man named Joe Engel. Joe Engel, by the way, literally walked around town with a name tag around his neck. He literally wrote Joe Engel, Holocaust survivor.
Wow.
And he would spend and he didn't talk about it much when he was before he retired. But once he retired, he made this his mission. He would go to a diner in the morning with his name tag on, and basically it's almost as if he's saying, "Ask me about my experience in the Holocaust," and he would make these incredible connections because people would be, first people would be like, "Oh, wow, oh, okay, okay," and then they start talking, and he would, and his like, I want as many people as possible to know my story so that everybody can tell my story and the stories of those who die. I mean, he made it his mission. So he gave, and every year he would speak at the synagogue and would be incredibly. I mean, it was always moving. I mean, look, I don't have to, elaborate on that. I mean, so so his nephew is an active member of the synagogue. So there was one particular year where he led Musaf, and so the Musaf service was right after Joe's talk, and so Mike, his nephew, when he led the Amidah, he when he got to the prayer of Mechayeh Hametim, he just closed on Mechayeh Hametim, like he did it like just so strongly. And what occurred and I don't know whether he meant it this way, but what occurred in my mind is that what did we just do? We just had, by Joe telling his story, he, in a sense, brought life to the dead. By telling those stories, he keeps their memories alive. And by us telling those stories, we keep those memories alive.
Have you ever seen the Holocaust Memorial in Vienna?
I've never been to Vienna.
It's-
So yeah, no, I
It's
mean,
it's
that
when
would
you
be
first
good.
look at it, it's this big square. It looks like it's a big square concrete boring building. And then you realize, and around the base, there's the names of all the camps. And then you realize that the entire facade is books, but it's not the spines of the books, it's the pages.
Hmm.
So you can't see the titles. And on one of the four sides, there's doors, but there's no handles.
Hmm.
So you can't get inside to see the titles.
Yeah.
And it's all the lost stories. I mean, once you
Um,
like, it took me a couple times of seeing it because we kept passing it. And Vienna was very creepy, by the way, but that's a whole other story. And when Elie Wiesel insisted they build this thing, when they dug to build it, they discovered the bema from the 1600s, which was one of the many times that the Jews were expelled or killed from Vienna.
Hmm.
But it's not just the lost stories of the people who perished, but the millions upon millions who will never be born. It's very effective. It's actually the most moving Holocaust memorial I've ever seen. It like haunts me. But it's lost stories. And October 7th, I thought the same thing, more lost stories,
Right. Right.
It just
No, no
keeps
question.
on
Yeah,
happening.
no
So I
question.
see your point about bringing life to the dead, telling their stories.
So
Yeah,
that's why I say it. I mean,
yeah, I
and
get that.
so I was glad to kind of have an additional meaning
Right.
to share. Yeah, yes, Richard. Sorry.
There's a little in the prayer book, a little aside by that passage that says, maybe you ask yourself, what parts of me are dead that I need to bring back to life?
Ah,
Oh,
okay. Okay. Interesting. So yeah, I think, in a metaphorical sense that we can, sort of, embrace that. Look, if somebody wants to say Mechaye Hakol, I don't have any objection. But I find that line of thinking to be meaningful. Um, so yeah, so you're talking about, you're talking about, I think, a certain, this is where the study of liturgy can potentially be interesting. In other words, like the word choices that have emerged over time. I do find also that the uh, and I do feel like there still are conversations about how we feel about certain passages that like that they appear sometimes in the Lev Shalem Siddur. Uh, some passages that where people say maybe we omit this, like there's a part where it's where we talk about destroying our enemies. Some people are uncomfortable with the with the language of it, so they kind of maybe they shy away from it, or they like there are parts where in which we recall the splitting of the sea, that the parts where the Egyptian army is drowned, they're sort of like, I don't know how much we want to like glorify that. I mean that you know it's part of the story, but do we need to be all rah rah about it is another question. So I mean, like those are all um those are all things that continue to be discussed in terms of what we actually say. And I think it's good for those conversations to continue, um, because I think uh, we get a little, for us to think that liturgy is frozen, or is cast in stone, never to be, just never to be altered in any way, uh, doesn't take into account the reality of the world.
Isn't there a line in the Seder, in the Passover Seder, about how we don't rejoice at the death of our enemies?
Yeah, yeah, or at least if it isn't, then there should be.
No, I think there is. I mean, we had a priest
Yeah.
once at one of our Seders, and he was really surprised by that. And I mean, he really liked that. But um, yeah, I mean, it's in my Haggadah. Maybe it's not in every Haggadah. I don't know.
Right, right, right.
Well, like what you're saying though, how much of this is, I don't know if you can say the original Hebrew, 'cause I don't know, Moses didn't sit down and write this stuff out, but I mean, these translations that's more inclusive, it makes sense to me that we wouldn't be here without uh, the mothers or whatever I'll call it. But how much is this getting changed from the original Hebrew, or is it the original Hebrew?
I mean, I don't. I'd have to look. I'd have to study a little more closely. Um, how much of it has changed. I would say that the Amida that we say, as opposed to like, is very, very similar to the way it was at least 1,000 years ago, right? There really aren't that many differences.
I'm talking about the translation. Like, well,
Oh,
to me, the most obvious one is like, uh, stop saying he when you're talking about God. You just say God.
mhm.
You can think what gender or non-gender God is. But what is the Hebrew saying? Is it saying Hebrew? I mean, is it saying he?
Ah,
And we just changed the translation, or somebody's changed the translation, or what is the original Hebrew saying all this stuff?
yeah, no, I mean it does say he. I mean that's why it's Hebrew and not Shebrew. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That was silly. Okay, let me answer it really. Yes, God God is referred to as, I mean, God is referred to by male, with male wording, um,
Yeah,
pretty exclusively throughout the Bible and throughout liturgy. Now, because we don't have a gender neutral, I mean, like gender neutral Hebrew really isn't out there.
well, you may be too young to remember. See, I'm serious about that.
Okay,
But
no, it's
it
fine. It's
used to
fine.
be, if you didn't know the gender of something, you didn't make it plural. You said he. And
Sure.
then it became sort of he or she, and then it became they. But It used to just be, if you didn't know, you just said, hey. It was sort of the all-inclusive kind of referred to a person or
Right.
a thing, you know?
Sure, and I
then-
think I think that it's and uh, and that's, I don't have bad things to say about that practice. I think that um uh, what I think the issue became, you know, that that he became associated with like that, like we would picture God in a male, that people would picture
Right.
God in a male way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we would just sort of assume, okay, this is all, and um, I know there have been some attempts to, first of all, to raise up the idea of the Shekhinah,
Yeah.
right, as sort of this, God's presence, a Shekhinah, which is a female designation, and to elevate that as sort of part of it. Um, and that's fine. You know, I think that what I try to it's funny, like one of the students that I tutor in Charleston was asking me about that not so long ago. He's this guy, this kid's like he's 10, and he's like, what is it, like what, it's like, was God a man? I'm like, the way I said, look, I can't say I know, but I would say that, like, I just think of God as just being like just these ideas that we have of male and female would just go are they're not, God's in a different realm. Like it's just it's not God is off of our charts, if you will. It's just so whatever God is just can't really be measured on that sort of binary classification. So yeah, that's how I would kind of approach it. It's
So
uh,
each of the rabbis associations for the denominations, or whatever you want to call it, they get together and decide that they want to change it.
um it's interesting how yeah, that's an interesting question, like how it gets changed. I mean, I find in the conservative movement, at least when it comes to like the last, handful of, like, last two or three generations, that a lot of the innovation starts in the grassroots. A lot of the innovation comes from different communities being like like individual communities being a little more experimental. And then um as people talk to each other, as ideas begin to spread, then they kind of work their way up, if you will, to where finally like the institutions of the conservative movement, and specifically the law committee of the Rabbinical Assembly, might take that question up. So, for instance, um, egalitarian practice, right? Um, Individual synagogues didn't really start playing with that, and certainly we're not finding that at the Jewish Theological Seminary, 100 years ago, or even, 75 years ago. What began to happen, like, and this is where I really think, this is where I think that the Jewish summer camp is such an incredible thing. People began to play with it when they were at Jewish summer camp, and specifically Camp Ramah. partially because they were just so far removed. It's like, all right, well, we're here. Well, what's anybody going to do about it if they don't like it? I mean, like, they began to kind of experiment. Well, what happened was that the people who went to camp, if there was an idea, a concept, what have you, that they found interesting, then they go to their home synagogue when it was in summertime. And they say, well, we did this at camp and this was interesting. And this was, and then and it would sort of spread to the synagogues and the individual synagogues. And then, and then as things began to happen to individual synagogues, then the word would reach, the sort of the central institutions. And that's when the movement as a whole would begin to confront it. I mean, back to the whole matriarchs thing.
Huh.
This was 30 years ago. I was at this point in college, and I was staffing my United Synagogue Youth regional convention. With the place where I had been a U.S. wire, I came back to staff a program, and I was and the different chapters, the chapters that came from the different synagogues of the Midwest region, all each one was responsible for a service. Okay, so there was a synagogue in St. Paul, Minnesota, called Beth Jacob, that where their practices were, I would say, a little more progressive than some of the other ones, and they led Shabbat Musaf. And they started to say, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka. You should have heard the shrieks in the room from other people.
Wow.
Going, what? Huh? I mean, I remember the service almost stopping because people were just so like, whoa, what are you doing? I'm like, at this point in, I don't think there was yet a conservative Siddur that had the option even for the matriarchs. So this is just 30 years ago, and you had, the U.S. wires from other places. I mean, I'm not saying everybody was offended, but there was enough of a noise from some people going like, "What are you doing?" I'm willing to bet that almost all, if not all, of those synagogues now include the matriarchs and the Amidah. I'm willing to wager that. So it just goes. So it's one of those things where, at that point in our history, we'd had, it was kind of split, or at least, or I mean, I don't know the numbers of it, but it was a very concerning thing for some people. And I would say that nowadays, like, I mean, even congregations where they don't include the matriarchs, if somebody hears somebody say the Amidah with the matriarchs, I mean, they're like, okay, yeah, all right, they don't bat an eyelash. I mean, they know that that's what a lot of synagogues do.
Yeah, 35 years ago, I was in Pittsburgh at my congregation, and we used the Silverman Siddur, and that verse did not have the matriarchs.
Yeah.
And so, it's curious. Yeah, I'd be interested to know. Well, the congregation doesn't exist anymore, so I can't actually go back and check if they would have changed it. So.
Yeah, the Silverman Siddur is, I mean, I think that was published in 1951 or something like thereabouts. I mean, so you're talking about and what was the standard for many decades,
Right.
Before Sim Shalom came along. So yeah.
I remember when Sim Shalom came along. I happened to be in New York at JTS, and Wolf, and I was friends with Wolf Kellman.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so I was in his office, and he had just gotten a box of the first box of Sim Shalom Siddurim, and he handed me one, and he said, "Here, use it well."
Oh.
And I have this. I have it to the,
Cool.
I used it until we switched to the new one. So,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, I still have my Sim Shalom that the synagogue gave me for my bar mitzvah. I still have that. And I still have the instructions I wrote down when it was Chatzi Kaddish for Musaf, where I'd written down in pencil slow because I was doing it too fast, I guess. Yeah, so I still have that. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, but I think these. By the way, and I'm really glad that we're talking about these things because I mean, like this is uh, because right, these questions they're ongoing. They very much are, and and there are times where I hear you know liturgical emendations or certain tunes where I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, so for it, like, I'm going to turn to the matter of tunes for a second. I'm a little torn about a practice that I've seen at a number of conservative synagogues lately, where and I should be honest, I have used this tune sometimes for this particular psalm, where Psalm 150, the Hallelujah, right, right. I mean, a bunch of psalms have Hallelujah, but this is one where it's like over and over again. Um, the they use Hallelujah Bekocho, Hallelujah Birkiahuso, Hallelujah Beninim Veuga. Like they use
Cohen,
the Leonard Cohen
right.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Right. A beautiful song, right? A beautiful song.
Yes.
I
Or-
think.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
I
it
really
is.
I really like that song. But you ever read the words of that song?
Yep.
It's not exactly like praising God. I mean, it's not really. I mean, it's talking about the how difficult relationships are, like romantic relationships are, among other things. And yes, it makes biblical references. I mean, there's, I heard there was a secret chord that David played in Please the Lord. I mean, like that's, so there are, I mean, Leonard Cohen did bring biblical,
He
references
certainly
into
did.
to a lot of his lyrics. But it's like, I mean, and honestly, for the generation, beyond me, a lot of people are like, they hear hallelujah, hallelujah. They're like, oh yeah, the song from Shrek,
Mm.
you know?
Well,
Um,
Who by Fire is the theme song for Bad Sisters
oh, really? Okay,
on
okay.
what do you call it? Apple. Yeah.
Hmm,
It's
interesting.
it's sort
Interesting.
of funny hearing that. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
So it's like does and I said to myself, and by the way, look, I'm the same person who likes to do Adonai to take me out to the ball game. I mean, like, so I mean, I'm not trying to say that like we should never use other tunes, but it feels like sometimes like to me, like when I hear that, it's like I don't know if that song goes with that song.
It's appropriate. Yeah.
I don't know. Um, I honestly go back and forth on that. But that's where I would say that, like so, you know, being positioning myself for a while as, oh, I'm embracing the matriarchs, I'm embracing these new things. That's one area where I might be saying to myself, oh, these kids, silly kids, what are they doing? Like this is maybe an area where I'm like, that might be a little too far for me. I don't know, you know.
Comes with age.
Going back to the melodies,
Yeah.
some of us like to sing Adon Olam to Rocky Top. And we had one rabbi many years ago who was absolutely incensed when we did that, when he heard that the first time. And he really dressed us down for doing that.
Oh, yeah. I think it's fun, especially because of where I mean, look, Adon Olam is, there are times where I remember sometimes like where Adonai because like of where we put it in the service,
Yeah.
that we make it as the closing prayer. Um, like if somebody would start taking off their talit at Adonai, or like somebody would like Adonai is a prayer. It's just as important as all the other. Okay.
But I think isn't the very last part of the service actually not part of the service anymore?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, technically, once you've done Kaddish Shalem,
yeah.
you've done, you've done like the fact that we do Aleinu.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about liturgical innovation. Aleinu was written. Some of you know this already. Aleinu was written for the high holidays.
I
Right.
didn't know that.
That's why it was written.
Oh,
And this idea and the idea of like va'anachnu korim mishtachavim modim, that therefore we lower ourselves, we bow, right?
Yeah.
That's the part where
Right.
where at least when I do it, I lay prostrate on the ground for at least for a moment.
huh.
That's the Alena was written for the high holidays, but it became so popular that now we put it at the end of all the services, but we do it after Kaddish Shalem.
Mhm.
Right.
So, like, technically, like if you're done with Kaddish Shalem, you're like you've done what you have to do, right? And so Aleinu, Adon Olam, Ein Kelohenu, those are all that. And by the way, that's why we have kids come up at Ein Kelohenu. Like if kids are around, like that's usually the point where we invite them up onto the beam because it's like, it's extras.
Official, huh?
It's extras, right? I mean, like, look, don't get me wrong, they're very nice and they're fun extras. I mean, they're, but and that have some nice ideas, et cetera. But like, it's really kind of a, but it's like they're kind of like they're kind of postscripts, if you will.
Actually, when we moved here, I was surprised by how many people don't stay for Musaf at all.
Like high holidays or just in general?
Especially the high holidays. The first service we ever attended at Heskamuna was Rosh Hashanah 2022.
Mhm.
And it was at the lighthouse because of COVID and the wall caving in.
Okay.
And after the Torah service, everybody got up and left. And I thought, I mean, it looked like everybody got up and left. And I thought, wait, what's going on? And then I discovered that the service was going to continue, but the place was practically empty. It was like almost like an official break.
Yeah.
And
And
it just kind of startled me because I wasn't used to that.
we used to have families that had large lunches, and then they would leave at a certain time, and that you really noticed it because it left a hole in the.
Is that it? Yeah. The services here are a lot shorter than the independent minion that I came from, which dotted every I and crossed every T. But that was okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I rely on the idea that at least on Rosh Hashanah,
Mm-hmm.
that people that like try to get people out on, at or around 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to be there till like
Try to
2:30.
do that as lead. I mean, like there are a couple times where it's like Rabbi, it's 1:07. Okay. I mean, like we were doing our best, I mean, like, but yeah, as opposed to it's like, but like people would ask it like, when are we done? I said around 1 o'clock. Okay,
Yeah.
then we can call lunch for 1:30. Like that's, so I try to make it so that it works that way. Yom Kippur, without the obviously without the pressure of people hosting big lunches, I would think, then we can keep them then we can keep people a little longer. Yom Kippur is its own thing because what else are you going to do that day? But anyway,
True.
yeah. So we try to do that. Well, let me see. Got a few more minutes. Let me just maybe just look at just the second part of this. Okay. This is interesting. One should not say liturgical poems nor a crovetz And I'll get back to the crovettes in a second, during the prayer. Okay, what's a crovettes? Sounds like a German pastry. I don't know. I don't know.
Does.
Gilliam, am I off on that? I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. No, I don't think so. It may be a Polish pastry.
But Polish, yeah, that's what I was
That's
thinking. Maybe
true.
Polish pastry.
Yeah,
Okay,
it sounds more
crovettes.
solid, yeah.
So what is crovettes? Meaning, krovot l'yotzer, close to the blessing of Yotzer Or, which is one of the blessings leading up to the Amidah. And some say it is an acronym for the phrase from Psalm 118, Kol rina v'shua be'holei tzadikim. So in other words, you don't just throw it in during the Amidah. Don't throw in like a whole extra poem.
The piyut.
A piyut, right? Now, the gloss, remember this is the Ashkenazic bit, and there are those who permit them, since they are considered needs of the public, and such it is practiced in all places to say them. So, that I think what is fair is that this is really a description of like the weekday Amidah as opposed to the high holidays or even some of the major holidays. I think that, look, the Amidah, one of the reasons why the Amidah for the high holidays is so lengthy is because of all of these piyutim, because of all these extra, bits of liturgy. That's one of the reasons why it is, why the Amidah is is so much lengthier than that of a typical day. So what you have here is this idea of like, at the time of the Shulchan Aruch, people were still kind of throwing in little asides in the Amidah, depending on the needs of the community.
Right.
Um,
Like they would honor somebody, or remember somebody, and they wrote a personalized piyutim for that.
yeah.
Huh.
Well, so in the few minutes I have left, I'm on that note. I just thought I just had this thought that it might be interesting to ask what you thought of there was something I did at our Saturday morning service, the one we had on Zoom just a few days ago.
Which was great. It was
Okay. So you like, I was just curious what people thought of that, because what I did was, all right, so it was snowing on Saturday, as you know,
good.
and there's a part of the service where from the fall to the spring, we add the phrase Mashiv HaRuach Umorid HaGasham.
Yes, you did. Look.
I threw in.
I heard it.
I said Mashiv HaRuach Umorid HaSheleg, right? That God causes the wind to blow and the snow to fall.
I don't know enough Hebrew to have caught that.
When I heard that, I thought that was so cute.
So I did that at one point, and I'm like, and I was just sitting there going like, but I wonder, like, okay, is that, would people be upset by that? Would people be like, oh, come on, that's not the
People
place
didn't
to...
even know. People didn't even know.
And
Some people didn't
Gilia
know.
did, because Gilia knows, but
Gilia did.
most
Rabbi Shush told me yesterday that she liked it.
She would have noticed that, but who
Yeah.
who would notice that?
do it for the Musaf service, and I did it for Musaf.
Okay, all right, so good enough. Yeah, all right. So I just want, I mean, like, part of it is, I think that throwing that in, is not. I'm not saying that everybody should have the license to just sort of, to vamp, to just be spontaneous with everything. But you know what? I think it is like there. I think there should be allowed at least a little bit of play here and there. I think it's something that should be coordinated with, the congregation if it's something that's going to be majorly different, right? I mean, I think that's why we have a ritual committee. That's, I mean, I think that that's something that conversation. I would want to be part of that conversation, of conversations. But like, when, but we want our prayer experience to be that mixture of keva and kavana, of things that are set and things that are a little more variable depending on the intention that we specifically bring to a particular moment. So,
Pittsburgh, for the Friday night service, where we say Ve'al Yerushalayim, we always added and Pittsburgh.
no, okay.
So, yeah.
Um,
Sometimes do it here. I sometimes say in Knoxville.
So I'll close with this. There is a psalm that we do when we say the Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals on Shabbat, and we Shir HaMa'alot. And then there's one part where it goes Kafi Kimba Negev, and so what would happen is people in United Synagogue Youth, the USYers, who come from the southeastern region, which is known as HaNegev, right? Negev meaning desert. The HaNegev, like people go, Kafi Kimba Negev, right? So when I was in USY, in the Midwest, right? We were the EMSA region, EMSA meaning central.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would hear, those, the ones from the southeast go, Kafi Kimba Negev, and we were like, okay, that's a little annoying. And we would so some of us began to go, Kafi Kimba Emsa, just to. It's like, we're going to make it a US-wide cheer. Let's make it a US-wide cheer. I don't know. So
it makes it fun for the kids, though.
It does.
It's not so serious, it's not like you don't have to be dying to be praying, you can have fun praying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So let's Zoom only next week, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
That's okay. It's okay. Glad you could join the conversation. We'll
seldom, and when you're here, I love going in person, but I just today didn't quite work for me.
Nice. No worries. Okay. All right, everybody. We'll see you soon. And thanks so much.